Hello my friends and welcome back to Chess with Konstantin. Today we have yet another exciting game that will hopefully teach you the meaning of material superiority in chess. So usually when people think of material advantage, they just count the overall pieces and whoever has the most points would be winning. But that's not really the correct way to evaluate a position. Because it matters not only who has the most pieces, but also who has the most pieces in the critical area of the chessboard where the attack is taking place. To illustrate this concept, we have a nice game between Mr. Bailin and Mr. Lipnitsky, which was played in Riga in 1950. And before we get into the action, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help this channel grow and produce more educational videos like this. Without further ado, let's start. We have pawn to d4, knight f6, knight f3, pawn to e6, c4, and pawn to d5. So this is now Queen's Gambit opening. White played the move which I do recommend, which is bishop g5. It's always a good idea to get your bishop out and pin your opponent's piece. And black played the recommended response, which is pawn to h6 right away. Moves like this with the pawn attacking the piece pose a difficult question for your opponent. What does your opponent want to do with that piece? Do they want to exchange pieces early and capture the knight? Do they want to try to maintain pressure with bishop to h4, but then they have to watch out for the pawn push? Do they retreat back? I mean, what do they do? And I do recommend playing h6 right away if your opponent does this. So here, Mr. Bailin, with the white pieces, decided to go ahead and capture the knight on f6, which is not a mistake, but I would personally say it's premature. I like to keep my bishops for longer during the game to see if they can become more powerful and more active pieces. But okay, we have bishop takes f6 and queen takes f6, and then a natural developing move, knight c3. And now it was black's turn to pin white's knight, and black played bishop to b4, and white responded right away with queen to a4 check. So you have to be very careful to not play one of these moves in response. If you were to play, for example, bishop d7 or pawn to c6, blocking the check, then the bishop will be hanging. So actually, the only move here is knight to c6, blocking the check, but also protecting this piece, which is what was played in the game. White continued with knight to e5, threatening this knight takes knight, and then possibly either capturing the bishop, or if the bishop captured here, then you have knight takes knight and then queen takes pawn check after the recapture here. So this is a serious threat, and to prevent any kind of checks with the white's queen, then black played bishop to d7. Most people in this position now will, in the white's place, will play knight takes d7. However, knight takes d7 is a mistake. I'll give you a minute to figure out why. You can pause the video, and when you feel like continuing, you can go on. So the reason why knight takes d7 would be a mistake here is because of the move queen takes d4. So you don't have to capture the knight right away. Actually, you can go ahead and take the pawn with the queen, and the knight will be captured in the next couple of moves because it doesn't actually have any squares to run away to. I mean, all these squares are controlled by black's pieces, and no matter where white tries to run, that piece will be recaptured. So because of queen takes d4, knight takes d7 was not played in this game. Instead, Mr. Balin, as white, decided to go ahead and capture the knight on c6. Now you don't want to take this knight right away because this bishop will be hanging. Instead, first bishop takes c3 check, and after b takes c3, only then does black recapture with the bishop. Bishop takes c6, and now the queen is under attack. So the queen moved to b3. And now let's take just a minute and evaluate which side do you think has the advantage out of the opening stage of the game. So even though both sides, neither side has castled and both kings are in the center, I would like you to note that black's bishop is quite active. It has been placed on c6, and black is getting ready to activate it further with d takes c4, making this very nice diagonal. And in contrast, white's king is in the center. The queen side is pretty open, so castling queen side probably doesn't make too much sense here. And it would take quite a few moves, I think at least 3 moves, for white to castle kingside here. I mean, you would have to either free up this bishop this way, or you would have to push the e-pawn, move the bishop out of the way, and then castle again. And so it's very clear here that actually black has the advantage out of the opening. So the game continued. D takes c4, activating this very nice dark squared bishop and attacking white's queen. White captured the pawn on c4. Now we have castle first from black, connecting the rooks and getting the king to safety. White's king, I would note, is still stuck in the middle. So playing a move like e4 right away is not possible because the bishop will capture that pawn. So to prepare pawn to e4, Mr. Balin played pawn to f3. It's a good move. And black responded with e5. So then after pawn to d5, attacking the dark squared bishop, and playing a bishop to d7, running away from that threat, white, not knowing better, because white didn't have a chance to subscribe to this channel back in 1950, white decided to do what I told you not to do in the last video, which is go after these vulnerable looking tasty pawns. These pawns look like they're free, but they're actually not, because white's king is still in the middle, and wasting time going after free material can get you into trouble. So white did not get that memo and went ahead and captured the pawn on c7. And what do you think black did here? Once again, this is a very teachable moment, so take a minute and see if you can find this really amazing move. The move here was pawn to e4, and I don't know if it would be great or brilliant according to chess.com, but it's certainly up there. This gives up a bishop. I mean, this is a bishop sacrifice. However, simply capturing this bishop is not possible because it will run into, of course, queen takes c3 check, and then the rook will be captured in the next move. Really, it took some skill to find that move, and it's not that easy to defend here. So rook c1 was played. This is the best defensive move in this position. And now we have rook to c8. Take a minute and appreciate the beauty of this. Once again, we are sacrificing the bishop. The black player does not care at all whether white captures this bishop on d7. And let's take a look at the threats. So if white's queen takes on a d7, then we have some very serious well, why don't we just see what happened? So he did take the free piece, quote unquote free. Now we have the spectacular move pawn to e3. This completely paralyzes the whole side of the board for white. And now the threat is a quite spectacular queen to d4. It looks like it's giving up a queen, but if white takes on d4, then rook takes rook here is actually checkmate. And queen d4 also threatens a mate in one, queen to d2 checkmate. And if the rook moves, then after queen d4, then capture here with check, and it will be mate in 2, again on d2. So now white has to figure out how to defend after queen to d4. And one defense was certainly queen takes b7, with the idea that after queen d4 you can come back to b2 and defend this checkmate. However, queen to b7 loses simply to rook takes c3, with the idea that it's not possible to capture this rook because it will be mate in 2. And computer is actually given mate in 16 here, or I'm sorry, mate in 21 here. Nobody is going to see mate in 21 over the board, but you can just see that white's king is stuck in the middle and there's a mating net. So I encourage you to grab a board at home and set up this position, and then just try to play either for white or for black. Try to see if you can find defensive moves, and try to see if you can find how to attack as the black pieces in this position. Black is clearly winning, and you need to really feel the winning, the power of the win here. But it's not necessary to calculate in a position like that, because it's clear that a mate is coming very soon. So queen takes b7 doesn't work because of rook takes c3. And so white player decided, I'm going to try queen to a4. So this does stop queen to d4 threat, because the queen can capture. However, it does not stop simply rook taking on c3. And as I mentioned, it's not possible to capture this rook, because this will be a mate in 2, like so. Mr. Balin played rook to d1 instead, trying to prolong the inevitable. But Mr. Lipnitsky simply doubled up the rooks on the c file. And now white is going to attempt to finally try to castle on the king side and get his king into safety. Certainly if white can accomplish this, then he will win the endgame, but in this position you still have to survive to the endgame. And so g3 was played to try to move the bishop out of the way and castle. However, simply rook to c1. We don't care that we are behind in material. Yes, black is down a whole bishop, but currently this bishop is not doing anything at all, and neither is white's rook. So really it is black that has the material advantage in this position, at least along the critical area where the attack is taking place. So bishop to h3 was played, then black captured the rook on d1. Queen takes d1, queen c3 check, king f1, and now queen to d2. Clearly it's not possible to take this because in the next move black will play rook to c1 and either force a queen or get a decisive material advantage. So white plays king to g2, attempting to prevent rook to c1, but black plays rook to c1 anyway. And here Mr. Balin, after thinking for a while, resigned the game. The reason why he resigned is it's not possible to capture the rook on c1 because this gives up the defense of the pawn on e2. And so if that happened in the game, then black would simply capture on e2 and then checkmate white's king on f2. And so what have we learned from this game? Besides the fact that pins are really nice and you should develop pieces. Well, once again, this game illustrates why going after free material here, no matter how tasty looking that material may look to you, is not a good idea when your king is still in the center of the board. So get your king to safety first, castle, then you can try to win all the material you want. But moving your queen around and capturing free pawns and free pieces will do you no favors if your king is going to get checkmated. And this is exactly what this game illustrates. That as long as the king is in the middle, it will be vulnerable. Well, I hope you learned something from this, and I will be looking forward to seeing you all next time. Again, don't forget, if you like the video, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all next time. Thank you. Konstantin out.